Limitless Wrestling fans. John Alba here, back with you, doing that old good stuff that you tune in to listen on this, show. It's good stuff. But I'm here with not just the czar of Limitless Wrestling, but of course, Josh Nason from F4WOnline to discuss Know Your Enemy, the 4-year anniversary show of Limitless Wrestling. First off, Randy, you got a new mic finally. Let everyone hear what you got to say.
I did, yeah, sounding a lot more crystal clear in Old LaGrange, Maine. So we're a lot better off now on the podcast front.
How about that? Josh, you impressed?
I mean, he's using all that Know Your Enemy money, right? Look at this guy.
I wish.
You wish. Well, I mean, here, look, we break down that fourth wall here on this podcast. Was Know Your Enemy worth the investment?
Yeah, it absolutely was. We were saying for a while we wanted to do over 1,000 people. We did not get that goal, but that wasn't a goal that we had to meet money-wise. It was a goal more so for us just putting the work in and hoping that we got something like that for a payoff. But we ended up having 845 tickets sold for the event, which I'm very happy about because, that's by far the biggest event in Limitless Wrestling history. So it was very much a successful event and definitely something that we're going to do again once the schedule opens up again at the expo. And
hey, here's the reality. Between the performers and everyone working behind the scenes, there were 1,000 people in the building. So
yeah, no doubt.
And
it felt really cool in there. It was a much different vibe than most Limitless Wrestling shows, but in a very good way.
Josh, do you agree with that statement? And if so, how so?
There was a different vibe for sure. You could tell from the minute that you walked in. It was just it was like a traditional wrestling show, if that makes any sense. Where you go in, there's the arena's dimly lit. There's a ring in the middle. It was at a different feeling just because of the size of the venue, and the expo isn't exactly the Cross Insurance Center or the Garden or anything like that. But it was a different vibe from when you walked in. So I think for longtime Limitless fans, it probably took a little bit of time to kind of align to that because you're so used to the tight, intimate atmosphere. I think throughout the night too, what I was really impressed by was the crowd noise throughout the whole show, even through the end. And the end was a little bit late, as probably we'll talk about a little bit later. But the crowd noise was impressive, and that really helped fill the building because there were obviously empty seats. But I mean, that was just because it was a bigger venue. But overall, it was from the outside, obviously not knowing the financials, I think it was a big success. Everyone seemed happy. There was plenty of room. The action was great. And when they announced that the next show was coming back to the Portland Club, there were definitely some boos. I think people got a little bit
a little spoiled.
A little bit too spoiled by the space.
A lot of heat.
Was there really?
Yeah, I mean, that was Eric Greenleaf levels of heat on that.
Wow. Like Eric Greenleaf Limitless Wrestling podcast level
yes.
heat? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is intense because, I mean, the reality is Greenleaf sucks. So, I mean, if that were the case, wow.
He heard about it, too. He had a rough night.
Oh, man, well, I can't wait to hear more about that. But a couple things before we delve into Know Your Enemy. As Josh just said, Limitless Wrestling returning to the Portland Club on October 25th for fresh blood, including the debut, finally, of Gangrel. Oh, I've waited so long for this, and Gangrel is making his Limitless debut. How'd it come together?
I was very stoked about this. We actually, for the longest time, didn't know that we were going to run an October show. That pretty much solely based on how we did at Know Your Enemy, and with it being a success, we decided to kind of turn our schedule up a notch and run October. So that came together, I would say, within the 2 weeks leading up to Know Your Enemy. I got in touch with Anthony Greene, who runs 01 USA out of Massachusetts in the Rhode Island area. And he's having Gangrel in on Sunday. So we're actually able to work together with 4 other promotions to bring in Gangrel to do a split throughout the weekend. So it worked out well for everybody. So very excited about that. You've been telling me for a long time, and not just you. AG's been mentioning it. A lot of guys who have worked with Gangrel on shows recently have just said how much of a workhorse he still is. So I'm very excited to bring him in because I think that's definitely a new flavor. We haven't had a WWF star or legend in quite some time. So I'm very excited to have someone from that Attitude Era timeline and bring them into Limitless.
Josh, this is the part of the podcast where you tell me how great Gangrel's theme song is.
I don't know if I can do that. It is terrific. I mean, that whole entrance back in the day was great. I was definitely surprised when I heard this announcement. Obviously, I know that John, you've been a Gangrel mark for decades.
Oh, yes.
For decades and decades. So yeah, this is the year of gambles for Limitless in a lot of ways. And like Randy was saying, this is the first time they brought in someone like this. And when I think Gangrel, I don't immediately think of a big work rate guy, but this is, I mean, I'm ready to be surprised. And I put it this way. When Randy wants to book someone, you trust him until he proves us wrong, and he hasn't done it yet. So let's go. Let's do it. I can't wait to see Coco Beware next or someone like that.
Gangrel's just one of the good guys in pro wrestling when all is said and done. I mean, he really is a good guy. And he's done, and I think this is worth saying, he's done a great job at training the next generation of pro wrestlers, too. He's done some great work in both Florida and Las Vegas, trying to bring in the next crop of pro athletes. So really cool stuff there. But thus far, we know AG, obviously, the new Limitless Wrestling champion, which I can't wait to talk about, will be on the show. Layla Hirsch, Violence is Forever, Don Hewson, and then, holy crap, Briggs is back, baby. What's been going on with Josh Briggs? He got married recently. He's doing all this stuff with Evolve. How did this come to fruition? And maybe why haven't fans seen him in a while?
Yeah, well, Josh has been pretty busy since really April. March was his last appearance in Limitless Wrestling at Welcome to the Dance. He was in a 6-way scramble. And after that, his life kind of went haywire. Like he had the hip dislocation at Evolve not too long after that March show. So that put him out for about 5 weeks. Once he was back, he was going full steam ahead. And we saw him on the Evolve special on the WWE Network. A lot of it, honestly, with Josh was scheduling issues. So now that we're, in a position where we had dates line up, I'm very happy to get Josh Briggs back in the Limitless Wrestling ring.
Did he say anything to you about not being at that anniversary show?
Nothing really. I mean, when you have date conflictions, there's really nothing you can do. That's just kind of the nature of the beast with independent wrestling, especially when, Josh is really getting out there and has had his schedule picking up rapidly over the past couple months. So it's been very good to see on his side of things that, he's staying busy and wrestling at really good promotions right now. But, Josh was a really important part of our roster throughout, I would say, the end of 2017 and all throughout 2018 into the beginning of this year. So very excited to have him back, and I can't wait to let everyone know what he's going to be doing.
About half the tickets sold for this so far. You can get them at limitlesswrestling.com. Anything else you want to add on that show, Randy?
Just be checking daily the event page Fresh Blood on Facebook. We just dropped tickets last night. There's under 250 general admission tickets available now. But we have a lot of announcements coming up. There's a lot of debuts that we have not announced yet. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Well, Dan Moff's back, right?
Yeah, Dan Moff makes his return. We actually just posted the wild video of the burning hammer that he gave Ace Romero at Know Your Enemy.
I can't wait to talk about
incredible
that match.
to see.
I can't wait to talk about that match. Limitless Wrestling also featured on independentwrestling.tv. You got 15 Limitless events there. And obviously, Josh, as I'm sure you can attest to, tons of other promotions that are worth checking out. All you got to do is use the promo code LIMITLESS, all caps, and you get 20 days for free. Have you checked that out, Josh?
I have not, but there is, I tell you what, it is, I think when I said this on this show before or other shows, but it is like when I was a kid, I had Superstars of Wrestling and videotapes from the video store to rent. Yeah. That's all I had for wrestling because I didn't have cable where I was growing up. And now it's like there is so much stuff, and yet people still manage to complain. I guess it's just in wrestling fans' hearts, but there is so much stuff out there and so much good stuff that people don't get to see. So, yeah, if you're a wrestling fan looking to get into it, yeah, a place like Independent Wrestling TV and YouTube. I mean, obviously, Limitless Wrestling's YouTube channel is also the place to be as well.
Yeah, certainly is. Content dropping all the time, plus all the good Let's Wrestle stuff drops there. And Let's Wrestle Volume 10. Can you believe it, Randy? Volume 10 already? Don't lose your head. That's coming to you on October 12th. We're a little under a month away from that. Calvin Strange versus the Masshole, Mike McCarthy, is your main event in this one. And the Mainstay Posse take on Alec Price and Channing Thomas in tag team action. Tickets still available, $10 for that. 10 shows already with Let's Wrestle. Is that wild?
It is very wild because this was something that we started last July and we didn't really know what the end game was. We didn't really know if there'd be the local support for it as well because we hadn't done anything in the Orono area for nearly 2 years. I think it was over 2 years actually by the time that we had the show. So we didn't know exactly what the support level would be. And but over the past year, we've really kind of got a core roster together of people who really support the product that we're putting out and really try to get the word out there to new fans or returning fans, and just we've tried to build it up, really strongly with a good foundation. So these shows are a lot of fun. I say it all the time on this podcast, but they're a hell of a lot of fun. So if you definitely want to check them out, this is the time to do so. $10 only for general admission tickets, and this lineup's nuts. I can't wait to get it out there.
Yeah, what's Mac Daniels doing?
I don't know, man. He'll be there. Your boy will be there.
I know
but
he'll be there.
I'm not
Obviously.
sure. I got to talk to Johnny Torres a little bit. Johnny Torres had some ideas in mind at the last show for Mac Daniels, so I got to see what he had in mind.
As Mac Daniels' advisor, I'd like to be included on these conversations. So
I don't know how well can you be his advisor from Florida.
He and I text regularly.
That's great.
This is really weird, guys.
Such a dick.
It is weird.
Such a dick. Anyway, let's talk more about Know Your Enemy. It is tough being in Florida and not getting to see these shows in person, but I get a chance to watch them all afterwards, and it's very exciting, but not getting a chance to be part of that history from afar, it stinks, but that's why we've got Josh here. Randy was super busy during the show for obvious reasons, so we're going to kind of run through this show, recap it, and hey, this is a wrestling podcast. What do people like? They like a shoot from the hip, and that's what I'm going to ask you to do right now, Randy. AR Fox, no show in this event. Promoted to face Christian Casanova. The match changes. It doesn't happen. So, what happened with AR Fox, and where do things stand?
Well, it was kind of a bizarre situation because we've been booking AR Fox since our third show. So that's 4 years pretty much, and have had no issues up to this point. Fox, as many people know, is not on much social media. He has a Twitter, but that's pretty much all he uses right now. So we set up the booking with him a couple months ago through Twitter, and then had booked his flight, booked his hotel, sent that to him and his wife as well, because his wife somewhat acts as his agent. Like, she'll kind of organize all of his booking stuff and make sure he has it. So I got in contact with her as well, and she let me know about that. So they both had all the information. And as recent as Thursday morning, I was chatting with his wife and resent over the flight information and the hotel info just to make sure they had it, because I know how easily I can lose things in email. So I feel that some people could do the same, and better safe than sorry. But we get to the day of the show. I get the notification because I have the fucking JetBlue app, and I log in to make sure that the flights are taking off. So checked in with his flight because his flight was to take off just after 10 a.m. from Atlanta. Got the notification that the flight had taken off. Unfortunately, I can't see his ticket check-in because I would have been able to catch it a lot earlier, but that's not something that JetBlue allows. So I saw that the flight took off, and I was like, all right, cool. Hadn't heard from him, but I don't hear from a lot of people who, get on their flights like usual in the morning. You know what I mean? I hear from them when they land and when they need their rides from the airport if they're not there. So Harry Aaron, our photographer and video editor and producer extraordinaire,
Jack of all trades.
Yes. He was going to be AR Fox's ride from Logan because they were both getting in within 30 minutes of each other. So Harry was grabbing his car, and then he was going to zoom over to the JetBlue gate and pick up Fox. We had a couple delays, and I knew about it because Davey Boy Smith got delayed, and then Teddy Hart got delayed as well. So I had known about those. We had planned for those. So Harry only had to take AR Fox. So once he got the car, he was zipping over there because Harry let me know that once he landed, he tried to get in touch with AR Fox and couldn't get anything, and then was getting voicemails when he tried to call. So that immediately is a red flag for me, because I know from the JetBlue app that he's already landed. So he's either got his phone still in airport mode, or we're in trouble. You know what I mean? So I start going nuts on any social media trying to get a hold of him or Ayla, his wife. Emailed him, texted. I called both their phones because I had a suspicion that something was wrong. Fox is usually very responsive, especially when he lands. He usually always texts me as soon as he lands, just to, let me know that he's there, and whoever's going to pick him up can come get him. And I start feeling suspicious because I know that we're running on a time crunch too, because at this point, this is, I would say, 1:15 in the afternoon. And he would have landed at 12:30. So trying everything that I can. I call his wife's number, and then I get declined after like a ring and a half. Ooh. So I know someone's got the phone, and I'm hot at this point. So I call quite a few times, and finally someone answers me, and they let me know. I don't get an answer, by the way, until just after 2:15. And they finally pick up and say, "Oh, we thought the flight was tomorrow." And I'm like, I'm just shook my head. What the fuck? Like, yeah. I don't know. We literally spoke yesterday, and resent over the flight information. I don't know. I'm baffled at that point, but I can't be mad because I know that this is like problem solving time. We got to figure out if there's a fucking way that we can get him here. So I'm on the phone with her. I got her on speakerphone, and we're trying to figure out how close they are to the Atlanta airport from their house, and where we can fly him in. And unfortunately, there was just no options where he could get to the airport through, TSA in time to get him on a flight that would make it. The earliest thing that we could have got was he could have got into Portland at 8:52 p.m., Boston at 8:52 p.m., or Portland at 10:15. So we just didn't have the options available to, and I was ready to fucking just, I don't know, buy a new flight, because what the fuck else can you do? The dude didn't get on the flight. And it's really weird circumstances, because 2 or 3 weeks before this, he was also scheduled to wrestle Christian Casanova at Northeast Wrestling, and also did not get on the plane for his flight, which is fucking baffling. So I'm not sure if there's something with Christian that I didn't know, or what the deal is, but it was a big bummer, because I love AR Fox as a performer. I think he's exceptional. I think he's one of the best, but this is a really big bummer, because we had a lot of fans looking forward to seeing him. We had a flight and hotel already, booked for this guy, and then just doesn't show up out of, I don't know if carelessness or just not. I don't know what it is. Honestly, it was just kind of crazy circumstances, because this is not something that we've ever had to experience with AR Fox before.
Josh, when you hear that, and you cover a lot of pro wrestling, what goes through your head?
Well, first, I'm just curious, and probably fans don't know this. In that case, are you out the flight and the hotel, or how does that work?
Yes. So you can make a case for, if you have flight insurance, you can make a case about it. But what can you really say about someone not getting on a flight? There's really no good excuse.
Right.
So that's tough to deal with. The hotel, yes, you're out that, because you have to cancel within 24 hours for most of these hotels. So you're out that too. So that's where it, especially for like a smaller independent promotion, this isn't like, just drops in the bucket. That's kind of a significant amount of money that we just kind of pissed away for nothing to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a risk. So I mean, I think sometimes fans, especially with your shows, where they don't see a ton of changes on them. Usually it's because of an injury or something like that, like with Brad Hollister, and the pre-understanding. But something like this, I think it illustrates how much of a risk that you and other promoters all around the country, and even especially ones that aren't as reputable, and wrestlers may be willing to screw them over a little bit more, just not taking this seriously.
And also, like, it also shows how lucky you are that this really hasn't happened to you in 4 years.
We've been very lucky, and we've been lucky from the start that we had a lot of good people backing us up, like a Chris Hero or a Drew Cordero of Beyond Wrestling, like a lot of guys who talked to, you know, a lot of wrestlers who became core roster members and put in the good word early on, because you do see a lot of, especially promotions when they're first getting off the ground, a lot of guys will, you know, maybe take a bigger booking or maybe just no show them. I don't know, you know, shit happens all the time, but we have been fairly lucky with things like this not happening to us a ton. It's usually the injury bug or maybe a flight issue that gets us, but not something like this.
So what's the future for AR Fox and Limitless?
Pretty dim right now. I always say never, but if I can't trust you, how can I book you? Especially when I have to book a flight, you know what I mean? I don't want to get burned again. That's just, and it's not something that I want to promote and then get fucked over again and have fans just looking at me scratching their heads, you know what I mean? Because at this point I should know better after this happened, you know what I mean? Because AR Fox, you know, he's been here a lot. He's a pretty crucial guy in the eyes of our fan base, so I don't want to give that false hope again and then just get fucked over and everybody's bummed about it, you know what I mean?
But
So I don't know if it's worth it.
At this point, though, there's so much other talent out there that you'd rather have guys that and girls that will make their dates, and especially with this, the event coming up in October that you've said there's a lot of guys making their debuts or returns. Yeah, I think fans are willing to be like, look, they're basically on the promoter's side more than the talent. At some point, they're like, we trust you. Bring in new faces, all that. If he doesn't want to be here, then we're with Randy and we're with the promotion. So I think that's a good good thing. You built up that rapport that people are like, it's okay, you know. But I think you make a great point. If you book him again, it happens, then it kind of makes you look terrible, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I just, in general, I said this to a lot of people that day. I just want people who want to be here. So we had we had a group of guys and gals on the 6th that Know Your Enemy who wanted to be there. So that's all I need to know, and that's what we're gonna roll with moving forward.
Yeah, and I do think it's worth saying this, even if it is the circumstance or if it's not the circumstance. I don't know. You don't know. None of us know. You know, if there are other issues there, we hope those get resolved for his sake.
And I have no idea. I don't want to assume.
Right,
but
exactly. I'm saying we hope.
This could have been a huge miscalculation.
Yeah.
And if so, that's crazy. It must have happened twice in a month, and that's crazy. But yeah, who knows? I just, I love AR Fox. I do hope the best for him for everything, but I don't think that he has a place in Limitless Wrestling soon, just because I can't stand to get burned again in a situation like that.
Makes sense. Makes all the sense in the world. But we got cooking with this show anyway. Perfect match to start this show off with. I don't know if this was the plan to start the show off with this match, but Ace Romero defeated Dan Moff. I'm so glad that New England got to see what Dan Moff is all about. First off, Randy, was this the original plan here to start the show with this?
It was not.
I didn't think it was.
We're going to roll with Fox and Casanova. I think I told you the week before that's what we're going to roll with for the opener. Once I figured out that he was not going to make it, that was the move, was Romero and Moff to open, because I knew that match was going to be great. I just didn't know. I was torn because I was going back and forth on those two matches for a couple weeks, but I did think that Fox and Casanova would be the better opener in that scenario. But I think Moff and Romero made a case for the best opening match of a Limitless show in quite some time.
Josh, what did you think of the match? Was this your first time seeing Dan Moff in person, and did it work?
It was. Yeah, it was. And I was interested to see what match was going to go on first. And this is the first time that, Ace Romero's worked openers before, but the one I remember was he against Darby Allin back last November, actually. And that was a kind of a visual styles clash in a lot of ways. But this is just two big brawlers. This is like one of the things that kind of kept coming back to throughout the night was how much at times, in the most positive way possible, it felt like a traditional WWE house show where you'd have big guys going at it, and you'd have the way that things built and the way that the fans really get into certain things. It really felt like a really good house show, and again, in the best way possible. And ever compare WWE to Limitless, but this was a fun match. These two guys you could just show a picture of them both to a person that isn't a wrestling fan, and this match would be exactly what they would think of in their head. a few spots that were just like terrifying with that burning hammer. I don't at this point, and I know you guys have seen enough wrestling where sometimes you may not pop for specific things or go ooh for specific things. There were 2 times on the show that I did that, and this was one of them. And I was like, oh my God. And like I was glad Romero got up and he seemed okay. And obviously I saw him walking around a little bit later afterward. But that was one of the things where like it takes you out of it and like, is he like I literally thought he was gonna land right in his head and this was gonna be it. And luckily it wasn't. This was a very fun, hard-hitting match, and people loved it. The fans were in it from the start. This is when you really notice that the crowd was loud. When you know, the ring announcer came out, they were really into him as well. This is a perfect start to lead off the night.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Dan Moff has the reputation of being the consummate professional, consummate locker room guy. Did you get that vibe, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Dan Moff. I think he definitely earned his keep and earned himself a roster spot for a long time here in Limitless Wrestling after that one match. And just amazing stuff. This was a personal request from Ace Romero as well. When we booked Dan Moff for the event, he really wanted to face Dan, and they went really hard, man. And I knew that they would. Ace Romero broke his toe in this match as well. I don't know if he's put that out there, but that happened. But man, I was very happy about this match in general because, as Josh said, the fans were insane for it. I love to see someone come in their debut match, especially in a spot where he's kicking off a show and just does so well. Like I love that stuff. And Dan's just incredible. You've been saying it for a long time too. Rich Palladino was another catalyst to get him into Limitless, but Dan's going to be here for a while, and this is a great showing for him. And this is something that you can see clips of now on our YouTube and Facebook if you want to check that out. And I definitely suggest doing it because Dan Moff's a freak in nature.
And if I add one more thing, for months and months, Romero's been a main eventer in Limitless, going for the title. Has really been involved in kind of main event programs, for lack of a better term. And it didn't feel like a demotion that he was in the opening match at all. It just felt like a real special attraction match, a good match to kind of figure out, okay, where are we going to go with them next? But yeah, it didn't feel like a demotion at all or anything like that. So I just kind of want to put that out there. The strength of the card was such that you could have a guy that was, again, in main events and could have been the champion at any point over the last 6 months or so, where the title was introduced, and he could go in an opener and the fans are into him just as much.
Was Ace as happy with the experience as he expected to be, Randy?
Yeah, very much so. I think both him and Dan were over the moon because the match, I got to watch it back a couple days ago. The match is super fun, and just they did a lot of crazy shit, and the fans were just there for everything. So very, very good times for both these guys, and they were both very happy with it.
So then you had to call an audible. Christian Casanova, who, I mean, we put him over on the podcast every single week. Whether you agree or not with his tactics, he is one of the true up-and-comers in pro wrestling today. Not just New England, not just the East Coast, in pro wrestling today. He ends up going against Layla Hirsch. This had to be something that you were probably apprehensive about at first because you'd have to move around some stuff on the card. But were you ultimately happy with the result that you got out of it?
Yeah, I was super stoked about the result. I actually texted AG once I found out about the Fox situation because I had texted him earlier to see if he could get a hold of Gabe Sapolsky because I didn't know who would have I didn't know if I had the wrong number for Fox originally or if there were more numbers I could get. So I texted him to see if he could get any info, and he actually did. But I texted him again once I found out what the deal was, and I said, hey, Fox didn't get on his plane. Do you have an idea? And he said Layla and Christian would kill it. They killed it at Beyond. I guess they had a match a couple months ago for Uncharted Territory. And I said, fuck it. Like, I'm going to trust him because not only that, but there were so many people in the locker room pushing for Layla Hirsch to get into Limitless for quite some time. John Silver, Ashley Vox, just to name a few. And, I had seen what she could do. I saw the match with Christian. It was very fun from Beyond. So I said, why not? She got there, told her she was very stoked about it because, that's a pretty big position to be in for your debut Limitless match. When before she was going to be a part of the 6-way scramble. So she exits the scramble, goes one-on-one with Christian, and I think made a really big impact on the crowd for her debut in Limitless. She got some please come back chants, and there was a lot of noise on all of our social medias to bring her back. But again, can't say enough about Christian Casanova and how smooth he is in the ring. He'll be making a lot of money someday, and I posted it on Twitter last night. It reigns true. I think that this time next year, a lot of people will know who Christian Casanova is, not just us, in the Northeast section of the country, but I think a lot of people will know Christian Casanova.
You agree with that, Josh?
Yeah, he's talented, and I feel I was joking with Randy over text, like, this guy always manages to get screwed over. His opponents always drop out.
He does.
It's something else you could build on, right? And he did a he did a promo before the match and asked for the biggest and best, and out comes Layla Hirsch. It's my first time seeing her, and I tell you what, and like I was talking about earlier, this really seemed like a traditional pro wrestling crowd. She became the baby face in like 0.5 seconds. Like the minute this was such a great dynamic. It's something you don't really see on like that much anymore, except for like house shows and so on. But it was such a great face heel dynamic. Everyone was booing everything Casanova did. It was really kind of fun to see, because it takes you back that time when faces and heels, there was a distinct difference. And yeah, she was good. Casanova picked up the win. I was a little bit surprised at that. Just giving sometimes how these matches go with the intergender, but it was good. But Hirsch didn't lose anything by it. I think she's definitely a must-have for the future. There's some interesting matchups for her there. This was the fans are really into it, and despite not having seen her before, fans like I say, it took half a second. I think that's a great attribute to have, where you're almost an immediate babyface without even doing a thing. And this was for the people there live, I think they'll definitely remember this as a standout match of the night.
A match that I expected to stand out. Sounds like it did. The New Heart Foundation defeated the Workhorsemen. I want to read a section of a review here from the Wrestling Insomniac. He said, this match lived up to the hype that I'd built in my mind. First off, I love Hart and Smith's entrance theme, which is a great tune. This match was basically a tornado with action in the ring and a lot on the floor. We were treated to several amazing moonsaults by Teddy. I don't know how he and Too Cold Scorpio managed to float through the air like they do. It's amazing. He says the Foundation managed to isolate Henry in the ring, and Smith got the win. After the match, Hart cut one of his standard promos, but he put over the Limitless audience as well, and then Drake and Henry squabbled a little bit after the match. So, Josh, let's start with you here. Did this match live up to the hype in your mind? And what do you think's next for the Workhorsemen?
I thought this match was good, but not great.
Okay.
And
why so?
So I don't, and it could be a case where I build it up so much in my mind, and this was a match by far I was most excited for. And it may have been a case I built it up so much that no matter what, it didn't live up to the hype. And we see this with, MMA fights and pro wrestling matches and things like that, where you think, how can this miss? And it didn't miss, but like I said, it was obviously really good. I wonder, and this was kind of the thing where I thought about a lot during the night with the venue itself. Would this match have been bigger or felt better to me if it was like in the Portland Club or the Armory? It was a case where, even though fans are into it, just there's something with that, the intimacy with these smaller venues. Maybe does that help matches like this for me, and just some of the spectacular stunts and things like that Teddy Hart did. But overall, I mean, it was good. I need to rewatch this. I thought it was a really good match, but not the instant classic that I thought it was going to be. However, there was two notes I had. I did want to ask our fair owner about. There was a spot where the guys brawled into the crowd. It was wild. And I look over and I see a very familiar face, being one Randy Carver, and he was not happy. He was not happy with. I think he was telling security, some of your helpers, to rearrange the chairs or something like that. You're basically, to again break down the fourth wall, you were essentially telling. I think you might have told Anthony Henry to either get back in the ring or do something like that. I was a little ways away, so I couldn't tell. So I was kind of hoping you take us through what was going on in that point.
Yeah. Well, we had it, and on the card and pre-show, it was said and written. There's no fighting in the crowd here at the Portland Expo. Unfortunately, that message apparently didn't get picked up by everybody in the match.
You had to say it in Canadian. You didn't say it in Canadian.
I don't know what I had to say it in. But yeah, they about halfway through the match, they start going into the crowd, and I see, I think Teddy Hart got thrown into the fourth fucking row. Yeah. And then Anthony Henry runs and does his flying knee into the chairs, and then I think Davey Boy, I think they slammed Anthony Henry onto like 6 of the chairs, and at that point I've made my way over there at that point and tell Anthony Henry, we got to get the fuck back in the ring, because the Portland Expo, I do want to give them a ton of credit because they were so easy to work with throughout this whole process. Everyone who worked there that night were so cool about pro wrestling, because a lot of times you get people like with some of these venues, you get people who are kind of cranky that wrestling's there, or they're just not really stoked about it and they want to go home and whatever. Literally all their staff was so cool, and they were all about the pro wrestling show, and they had no issues really with this, which is something, even though they told me ahead of time, like, this is something that we can't do because obviously if we break their chairs, we're going to have to pay for them. And they ended up breaking a ton of chairs, and the expo is super cool about it. They were old chairs, so they gave us a pass on this one, which was incredibly kind to them. But this was, we had talked about before the show, no fighting in the crowd. That's pretty much a standard with every Limitless show, because we don't own the chairs, so if we break them, we have to buy them. In general, I think the match was really fun. I did miss a lot of it because after I realized the chair debacle, I went to go find someone from the venue to make sure that we weren't gonna fucking get kicked out. You know what I mean? I was a little worried about it, but I think the match was a lot of fun. Teddy Hart did some crazy shit like he always does. I love having the new Hart Foundation in Limitless Wrestling.
So what's next for the Workhorsemen?
I don't know, man. They're kind of on the outs right now. They're having a rough time. Anthony Henry beat the fuck out of JD Drake and Evolve recently, so I'm not sure if the Workhorsemen as a unit is going to be something that's moving forward in Limitless or anywhere. But I definitely think that you see James Drake and Anthony Henry back in Limitless very soon. Just maybe it's in a different capacity. Maybe we see them come back as singles wrestlers, which is something that we really haven't seen in a couple of years.
Kevin Blackwood, what a year it's been for him. It is the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, but he's back at the top here. Gets an enormous win over JT Dunn. And we talk about it a lot here, Randy, those unofficial Limitless power rankings where someone earns their spot on that Mount Rushmore. Kevin Blackwood is creeping his way in, isn't he?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, since his return from the accident, and I do want to say really quick, I don't know if either of you got to see it, but Tony D put together an amazing mini doc about the Buffalo Brothers this past week that we released. Tony D is a new addition to our production team. He's going to be working closely with Harry on different pieces like this, but this is a really great piece that he put together on their accident recovery and their return at the Vacation Land Cup. But Kevin, since his return, we saw the win against Christian Casanova. He eliminated JT Dunn from the Vacation Land Cup finals, and now he holds a one-on-one singles match victory over JT Dunn, which that's going to be huge for someone like Kevin, especially against someone like JT, who's really been a pillar of Limitless Wrestling for a long time.
Josh, what do you think of the match?
Felt like a really great WWE house show opener. This was solid. 2 characters, which had a backstory. It was good. And this was nothing spectacular here, but this is logical progression for Blackwood as he's, kind of getting pushed up the ladder. And we talked about this last show that Randy and I were on. It makes perfect sense. And you see guys that come back from near tragedy when it comes to accidents and injuries, and they can go one or two ways. And Blackwood seems to, while still not losing the essence of kind of his character, he seems to have enhanced certain aspects of it. And this seemed to fit. The win wasn't he won with the roll up, but it wasn't like a, distraction finish or anything like that. So it keeps him strong. And really, the Dunn was a huge heel in this, especially afterwards. It took him a long time to leave. He kept getting more boos and more boos, pushed Rich Palladino, which got him some heat as well. So now it's a case like, I'm interested in this from the business side, but kind of the booking side, and obviously don't want to reveal anything coming up, but it's a case where maybe Dunn isn't booked for a couple of months because you want to maybe let him kind of go away for a bit. You build some other guys and bring him back in something big, because right now he's kind of in that no man's land
limbo.
Yeah, he's not he's not in the main event mix or anything like that, but he just has this loss to Blackwood. You kind of without I guess not risk cooling him off, but kind of take him off for a few months, reheat him, and then bring him back in something a little bit bigger because obviously he has the name and has been around for a while.
Yeah, I get that side of it. I don't think that'll happen though. I think JT is going to be around, but we have seen kind of a fall from grace for JT Dunn over the past few months because in May, we talked about it here on the podcast, John. I think he was a front runner in many people's mind to win the 2019 Vacation Land Cup and go on to face MJF in September. Unfortunately, as we said, eliminated by Blackwood, and then straight up one-on-one loss to Blackwood. So that does put a lot of people ahead of him in the race to get a championship match, but I think it's all about the climb back up. And
right.
If we've seen anything from JT Dunn, we've seen that he can turn things around in the, I was going to say snap of a finger, but I should say rotation of an elbow.
What we now get to see with JT Dunn is we get to see him be a chaser. Whereas before, as you said just before, Randy, he's kind of hanging around at the top. Well, now we have to see if he has that buzzword here, intestinal fortitude, to climb his way back. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay. A match that I was just absolutely terrified for because I know all these individuals very personally. The Mainstay Street Fight. The Mainstay Posse pick up the win. Danger Kid and Aiden Agro over Alexander Lee and Brandon Kirk. Joey Eastman was in their corner, obviously. Here, a little synopsis. Holy expletive. This one needed to be seen to be believed. They used trash cans, thumbtacks, a door, barbed wire wrapped door, lobster pod, and more. It was brutal with action both inside and outside the ring. Kirk had his tongue stapled to the top turnbuckle. Also, Lee handcuffed Danger Kid's earlobe to the bottom rope. Kirk was busted open early in the contest, and then later when he took the lobster pot to the head, it really tore him open bad. That's what I want to piggyback off of now. What is the status with Brandon Kirk? How did he get messed up, and where do things stand?
Brandon Kirk was luckily okay. I'll start off with that. He wasn't great. It was he got busted open pretty bad. He was busted open early on in the match, but it wasn't anything super serious. But he caught the Danger Kid caught him with a lobster trap, and I think it hit him on like the forehead just a certain way, and all of a sudden he was gushing with blood. And I missed this piece because I saw Danger Kid hit him with the trap, but from my vantage point, I did not see Kirk after that because I think Kirk rolled to the floor very quickly. So he rushed himself to the back. Big shout out to Teddy Hart, who saw the X get thrown up from the ringside area, saw Kirk coming, and he ran downstairs and got someone to come up with towels and got him all set very quickly. So it's good to hear things like that the roster sticks together so much in a situation like that, because the Portland Expo is huge. I was on the the entrance side of the arena, not the wrestler entrance side, but the fan entrance side. So I get a text pretty much as soon as he rushes through the curtain, and I make my way back there, and there was a legitimate blood trail to behind the curtain, and then there was a pool of blood on the floor. And it was scary for a minute because we just, we had pressure on his head with towels, and we hadn't seen how deep it was yet. So once he removed the towels, we had Angela there, and we had Joe, who was EMT on scene. So we did have the right personnel in place. Angela took great care of him downstairs and got him cleaned up. I think he ended up getting glued shut.
Yeah.
And I know that he didn't get staples or stitches or anything like that. It wasn't that deep, but it was a gusher that we were worried about in the moment, because you just never know the severity of something like that right off the rip. But luckily he was okay, but it was a scary moment for a second.
Josh, was this match as personal as the build would have lent it to be?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was wild. It was insane. I mean, the fact that, the tongue got stapled. There was a barbed wire board or door that came out that was used. Shutters or these, partitions came out. That was great. Thumbtacks. It was lobster trap. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. It was like the limitless version of that Cracker Barrel challenge match or whatever it was a few weeks ago in AEW. This was wild. I was definitely surprised the Posse won because I didn't know if this was going to be a program that kind of kept going and going. And I can't remember the last time the Posse's actually lost, and I didn't know if that might be kind of building towards something, but apparently not. But this was and the injury was weird because he Kirk immediately leaves and goes to the back, and it's like you don't really know what is going on, if this is kind of part of it or whatever. And he starts kind of throwing up the X. Yeah, you can see Teddy Hart in the back, and I mean he's kind of known as like a death match wrestler, right? Is that kind of his thing?
Yeah, so for him to be concerned.
I've never seen a deathmatch wrestler leave because of get too bloody. It's almost like they want more and more because they think it adds something. So I didn't know if he tore his knee or so. No one, from my vantage point, I was sitting in the stands. I really wasn't sure what happened, but this was and I mean this shows what pros the Posse and Alexander are. I mean they were able just to basically work through the rest of the match without one of the key components in it.
But it's almost poetic in a sense that Alexander Lee was left on his own there to go against Danger Kid and Aiden Agro, was it not?
I think a lot of people thought that Kirk had just like abandoned the match when in reality he was, potentially hurt. But yeah, it was absolutely kind of poetic justice there that they end up tearing down Alexander Lee to close out that contest.
The one thing that with the bigger venue, this definitely hurt a little bit. Especially not having video boards, is I from my vantage point, I could not tell that the Danger Kid's his earlobe got handcuffed to the rope. I thought it was just his hand or something like that. It was tough to tell from our vantage point. And then afterwards, when he came off and he was trying to get this poor guy the handcuff off his earlobe while the match is going. Ugh. I mean, this was it was a spectacle to see. But this, one other note from this, and we can move on. This is the match, and I've really been impressed by Aiden Agro for a while, but for some reason, this was kind of the match that really stood out. Like I'm really kind of interested and excited to see what he could maybe do as a singles wrestler at some point. Limitless. I know he does a lot of that with Let's Wrestle, but there was something, I don't know what it was, but there was something that just stood out, maybe just the look or everything like that, where I was really kind of intrigued by it. And but this overall, this was a really fun match. I'm intrigued to see where this goes from here. Obviously, hopefully you've not heard the last of Joy Eastman, because he's a great heel heat magnet when he was out there, especially even this era. It's tough to do, but this is hopefully this is not the end of this conflict. I'm guessing it won't be though.
Yeah, I've heard a thing or two about Aiden Agro's singles career in Let's Wrestle.
Yeah, have you? I think you know about it quite well.
Anyway, so you go to intermission after that, and I guess my question is, how does the crowd respond coming out of that, even with a break? Because that's got to be so crazy to follow up. Butcher and the Blade had that responsibility of having to try to do just that. They ended up picking up a win over Filthy Tom Lawler and the Dirty Daddy. Maybe I'm a little surprised by this, especially with all the hype of finally getting Filthy Tom Lawler there, and obviously, I'm a big Dirty Daddy guy. How'd the crowd respond to this one, and what'd you guys think of it ultimately?
So I didn't get to see a ton of this match. I do believe that this position is the toughest on any of our cards to be in for the wrestlers involved, because you are following up. The first half had a lot of matches that people were looking forward to, matches that they were excited about, and it ended in such a crazy way with that street fight that you're having to come back from so much. So this was a very tough part of the card for this match to be in. But yeah, Butcher and the Blade picks up the win. They are the tag team in the match. As much as Chris Dickinson and Tom Lawler are excellent competitors, I think they lose out in the tag team experience realm of everything. But I did miss a lot of this. I'll pass this one off to Josh to see what he thought about it.
This is a weird match. It was really weird. The way it was put together was weird. They kept flipping between faces and heels, both teams, and the fans kind of were like, they would get into Tom and Dickinson at one point, then they would switch over to Andy and Pepper, and then they would go back, and And then there was like a hot tag by the heel team at one. It was hard to kind of follow the story of the match. It kind of got lost. And then eventually, Tom does this. He puts the mask on. So he comes out doing this gimp character thing, which he's done before, which I don't know. At this stage, I mean, I would tell him this. I actually was DMing with him because he does a podcast for our website. I haven't actually heard what he thought of the show or anything like that. I was kind of trying to get his thoughts on that. But he was, I think he was flying to Dallas. That was another thing I want to ask about later is the MLW contingent. But, to me, like, he's a former MLW champion. He's really kind of, his stock is going up. I'd rather kind of see him kind of carry himself more like Dickinson, I guess. So the gimp thing kind of threw me off to begin with. So he does this airplane spin the match and people start booing. And I don't know if they were booing them or the move, or this was just a really weird match. And it was a tough spot to be in, but it was just kind of this, it was strange. I think that's the thing I'll say the most. This is a strange match.
Yeah. Well, hey, not everything's going to be a home run on a show sometimes. That happens. And I still think the crowd was probably excited to see Filthy Tom Lawler make his Limitless debut.
For sure. And I think it was more so just, it was such a weird crowd dynamic because I think people liked everybody in the match and didn't want to boo anybody in the match. And that's where we create some awkward friction. If it's not battling fans with battling chants, like we saw with a Retro AG and Ace Romero, for instance, sometimes the energy gets lost in a match like that.
Especially since you don't have tag belts. It's not like these guys are fighting if it was like a number one contender match, or even if it was for the titles, there really wasn't anything at stake. It was just kind of I don't say exhibition, but it was just kind of a match, and those things happen. So yeah, it was kind of a weird spot to be in. But that's the wrestling biz. Hey,
all of a sudden here, Randy, DL Hurst is a major player in Limitless Wrestling.
Yeah. He's kind of carved himself out not only a roster spot, but just he's in line for something pretty soon. A big match. I'm not sure what it is, but he's definitely in line for something big soon.
He wins the scramble here. This only a 5-person scramble due to the match change earlier in the night. But even with one less person, was this match any less spectacular?
From what I got to see, this was a lot of fun. I got to see some of the opening moments and some of the closing moments, but Jody Threat is extremely fun and someone who, if schedules align, I want to have on every Limitless show moving forward. John Silver continues to prove that he's just so underrated still in the Northeast area. I'm still so shocked that he's hasn't blown up yet.
Hey, he showed up on WWE TV this past week.
He did. That's my dream match too. John Silver versus Otis Dojovic. But this was a lot of fun from the pieces that I got to see and from the reviews that I saw from people. A wild cast of characters in this one, and as you said, DL Hurst really kind of solidifying his spot and solidifying that he is someone to be reckoned with in the Limitless Wrestling locker room by picking up a victory here.
Josh, any thoughts on this one?
Well, first I wanted to ask Randy about Evil Uno. He was supposed to be in this
match, we didn't get to talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What happened? So, Evil Uno hit me up. I think it was the Monday leading into the show because AEW had a show the weekend before.
It was, of course, right after we dropped the podcast.
Yes,
that's typically how things go.
So. I think it was literally within hours of of the podcast, but he hit me up. It was, I think, midday Monday, and he said, "Hey, I just left my doctor. I fucked up my hip over the weekend. I've been advised to take 2 weeks off. If you really need me and it's crucial to the event, I'll still come and we can figure out a way around it. But I don't want to bring somebody in with more, with potential for them to get hurt. You know what I mean?" And he really wasn't comfortable and not in a good place injury wise. So, we made the decision that he would not be coming, which was a bummer because I was very excited about him. And I think he added a really unique flavor to that scramble. But I'm not going to put a guy in a position where he's going to potentially injure himself worse when he's just locked down the, biggest contract of his career. That would be insanely selfish. And it's never something that I want to do putting, workers in a position where they could get hurt worse. So we made that decision. We put it out there on Tuesday that he would not be appearing, unfortunately, and that our replacement will be set. And that's where Puff comes in. And we finally get the confrontation between Puff and John Silver that we've waited a while for, because unfortunately their singles match in July was scrapped due to scheduling issues. So this is kind of a cool payoff for people who have been following the story of the Thick Boys and have been following Limitless Wrestling for some time. They finally get to see Puff and John Silver come to blows. But I was bummed about Evil Uno. I know a lot of people were, because Evil Uno, I think I said it on the podcast, he's been a favorite of mine for years. I really liked the Dark Order when they were the Super Smash Bros on the Independents. So I do hope at some point we can work with Evil Uno in some kind of capacity.
I was a little bit surprised there wasn't more heat for when Silver and Puff finally went at it. For whatever reason, just that immediate thing, it was almost like people kind of, I don't say forgot, or they just, maybe it could have been just the crowd makeup as well. A lot of new fans that weren't really familiar with it, but I was kind of hoping for that big kind of like, oh, finally these two are going to go at it. Maybe if they had, built it up throughout the match or something like that, just kind of start, they finally, everyone kind of cleared out and they finally were able to kind of go at it. So I was kind of hoping for a little bit more with that, but two notes again. DL Hurst, obviously, picking up the big win, as we mentioned last time, that he's positioned for some big things, and that's always kind of fun to see. The skateboard shots by Threat, I thought were in the spots that she used the skateboard in, I thought were really innovative, and DL ended up winning, basically taking advantage of one of those skateboard tricks. So that was pretty cool. And then also people really love Puff, man. I mean, they are just really into him, no matter what spot he is in the card. And I have this weird fascination. I want to see a match between him and Chris Dickinson, just because two fan favorites, something kind of fun like that, and maybe see him in a more serious match. Or, I mean, I look forward to the day that perhaps maybe even challenges for the Limitless title. You never know, but he's one of these guys that you kind of just, he's not really pushed as a major star or anything like that yet, but people are really into him no matter what. And it's kind of, it's cool to see that.
Puff and Chris
fun.
Dickinson in the same ring together is a lot of man meat.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not sure if the crowd could handle that, but it would be awesome.
Someday.
All right, two more here. Let's get through them. Chris Statlander and Ashley Vox pick up the win over Jeremy Leary and Skylar. Chris Statlander's career was on the line. Jeremy Leary's hair was also on the line. When I saw what went down, I was shocked. I would never have believed that Jeremy Leary's hair would end up on the floor, but it did. What was the reaction? And more than anything else, how's Jeremy doing after this traumatic loss, Randy?
Well, this was one of the biggest reactions of the night. I luckily did get to see the conclusion of this contest, and literally saw people jumping out of their seats, because I do think that this was an outcome that people did not expect. Chris Statlander, there were rumors, swirling around that her time on the Independents were coming to a close. So I think that people really bought into that and thought that, her career would potentially end at Know Your Enemy. Her and Ashley Vox, former rivals, working together, did very well as a tag team. And Jeremy Leary has not been taking it very well. If anyone follows Limitless Wrestling on social media, they know that basically any post that he is mentioned in, or any time we've posted a picture or video of the new do for Leary, he responds promptly with a delete this comment. But I think he's doing all right. I reached out to Skylar for a comment to see if they're going to reuse some photos for their Christmas card from last year, or if they're going to take new ones. I got no comment, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, it was surreal seeing Statlander and Vox cutting the hair of Jeremy Leary in the ring, and then he gets seated down at the barber station with Bradford the barber, and some of the members of the Limitless fan base are literally holding Jeremy Leary in place as he's getting his head shaved, which is that was quite a moment to see.
Josh, this is just kind of the definition of fan service, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, I got to say something here.
Go ahead.
You two guys on the other side of this microphone have luscious, thick hair. I get it. Dark hair. All the ladies love it. And all the ladies flock to Randy and Alba down in Florida. I get it. But let me tell you something, and I'm going to stick up for Jeremy Leary. Bald is beautiful. Shaved heads are fantastic. Easy to maintain. You save so much money on getting your hair cut. It'll set you free. Jeremy Leary, I know he's a huge beer fan. He's in my heart now, and I will look. I will gladly support him in any type of in this transition into having a shaved head. It's a fantastic look, and I'm glad that he is finally free of dealing with all those follicles on his head. And you guys can't understand that, but I know my friends out there listening that have shaved heads as well, either by choice or not by choice. They will appreciate it as well. So congratulations to Jeremy Leary on his new haircut. Back to notes on the show. I'll say this. I was thrown off by Chris Statlander's new music. I loved Alien. Is such a perfect song for her. So I kind of get what she's going for the new one, but that threw me off a bit. Vox, I noticed there was no long usual intro by Rich Palladino. They kind of got right into it. And yeah, Statlander wins and people really, really pop big. And I was worried because, we've seen this before, some of these haircut gimmicks that sometimes they'll cut a little bit of hair in the ring and then that'll be it. And people will be like, oh, we kind of wanted to see it. And initially they started cutting a little bit of Jeremy's hair in the ring. And then everyone just kind of disappeared. And I was like, oh no, is there not really going to be a payoff here? But no, everyone went over to Bradford's seat over there, just off of ringside. And Statlander and Vox just seemed to disappear for whatever reason. I didn't see them or whatever, but yeah. And then they shaved all of his head. So it was legit. And yeah, a fantastic looking guy, Jeremy Leary, even in defeat. So if you need a shoulder to cry on, the first beer's on me.
This is a true story, and Randy can back this up. Jeremy Leary and I came very close to having a hair off at a Limitless show.
Oh, yes.
It almost happened.
Almost the thing.
I don't know what a hair off would have looked like, but it almost happened. So the seeds were planted.
Offensive a hair off in this day and age. Come on. Unbelievable.
Well, let's talk about the match that everyone was here for. Retro AG challenging for the Limitless Wrestling Championship against MJF. This was like some old school heat here. No surprise, MJF obviously in it. Deliberate low blow from MJF. And then Randy, you got yourself involved here. You wanted this anniversary show to go out the right way, and it did. Anthony Greene is your new Limitless Wrestling Champion. The moment, months in the making, maybe even years in the making. First off, Randy, for you to get yourself involved, there must have been some vested interest here.
Yeah, I hate to get involved in anything. I say it on here all the time, but in a situation like that where it's quite obvious that MJF is looking for an easy way out and an easy way back to AEW with a championship, something had to be done. And we restarted the contest and made it no disqualification very early on. And Anthony Greene ends up walking out the winner and the new Limitless Wrestling World Champion. And I did not get to see a ton of this one. I saw it in pieces because this was a lot of I was kind of doing any damage control that needed to be done with the venue at this time, and just kind of getting ready to close up shop and try to get out of there as quick as possible. But I'll pass it off to Josh. But from what I did see, a very fun match. The crowd, like as you said, so much heat for MJF, and they were solely behind Anthony Greene in his quest to become the champion.
Yeah, fun match, and I give the crowd credit. And maybe something you can talk about in a minute, Randy, is the length of the show. In that it ended when this match ended, it was about 11:30, if I remember right. And the crowd was, there's a couple of people that left, but there were still, there's still, I'd say maybe 600 people there. The 800, maybe a little bit more, that stayed around for the end. And when Greene won, that was a big pop. Everyone, one of those like. You don't see this in wrestling a lot, is the jump to your feet pop. And a lot, I'm sitting in the stands again, and you see all these people at ringside just jump up to their feet when Anthony Greene won. It was a really great Limitless moment, a fun moment. This was, there was, again, the no DQ thing added some to it. There was a table spot on the outside. It was tough to see because it was on the opposite side of the ring where I was from. But this was, he hit that unprettier off the ropes in Greene picking up the win in the title. And it just felt right, and I think going into this kind of thinking like the anniversary show, can you kind of paying off the climb that Anthony Greene's had winning the Vacation Land Cup. And this was, this was a great payoff for it. People were into it. And I'm excited to see, what challengers Anthony Greene gets thrown his way. If it's some new faces or just some new things, and it's going to be a fun era for Limitless. I'm excited to see what happens with AG.
Did you and AG have a little bit of a moment afterwards, Randy?
I didn't get to see him for a little bit because I was at the front door, and I didn't get to see much of the conclusion of this contest, or I don't think I saw him for probably 30-45 minutes after the event. But we had a moment before him and Max went through the curtain. It was a big deal. This was probably the biggest main event in Limitless Wrestling history. It's right up there with the inaugural championship match. And, I chatted with AG after as well. And it's just, I was telling him it's just pretty crazy to see how far he's come. And that's not just in the grand scheme of Limitless Wrestling. That's in the professional wrestling world. Because when Anthony Greene started with Limitless, it's a story we've told before. He was a last-minute addition to a show, and I wasn't sold on Anthony Greene by any means, and I don't think he was sold on me or Main Wrestling. But since that stage one event, we've worked together and done some really fun things, and he's just progressed so rapidly as a professional wrestler, especially over the past year, and he deserves everything coming to him. And I'm excited to see where this run as the Limitless Wrestling World Champion goes.
And you had that great video with him as a when he was a referee when he was starting out, and there was MJF, the clips of him on that morning talk show. I remember seeing that, and it kind of helps build that whole a lot of the backstory again for people that have maybe not be familiar with this, maybe looking at other Limitless stuff. You mentioned the Buffalo Brothers documentary and things like that. Those things kind of help fill in some of those gaps for those people that are interested in it. But yeah, I mean, for those people that are just coming to a wrestling show for the first time or seeing Limitless for the first time, I think they were able to get the story pretty quickly that MJF was the heel and AG was the guy that everyone wanted to see win. And yeah, people went home happy. That's for sure.
Then MJF shakes his hand.
Quite out of character there from MJF, if I have to say so myself.
Do you think that was out of respect for the organization, Randy?
I don't know if it's out of respect for the organization or for the respect that someone finally beat him. Max is, throughout really his whole run in Limitless Wrestling has been kind of untouchable. He's had, minimal losses, minimal hiccups throughout his career in Limitless Wrestling. So could be an earned respect for Anthony Greene for pinning his shoulders to the mat. Or it could be a respect for the organization. I'm not entirely sure. It was something very out of character for MJF.
But maybe that's what this is all about, getting to this point where you have a champion of the people, where the former champion has some sort of respect for him or the people who made him champion, ultimately.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what this is all about, folks. 4 years of Limitless Wrestling coming full circle here at Know Your Enemy, and now it's on to bigger and better things as we move into this October event. All things considered, it sounds like this show was a success, and Limitless Wrestling fans got what they paid for. Josh, any final thoughts on the show?
I did have two questions real quick for Randy. One was, you had a ton of the MLW roster on the show that were heading out to War Chamber in Dallas the next night. Did a lot of guys leave that night or the next morning? Or were there any kind of travel concerns because of that?
A lot of guys left the next morning. We luckily had good contact with the people at MLW pretty much leading into the week of that event. So we had them all in the same hotel. Harry, our producer, was actually he was the main driver for everyone. So he luckily grabbed everyone, in the lobby because I think they were all on the same flight. Yeah, I think everybody was on the same flight going from Boston to Dallas. So anyone who was in our crew who was at that hotel, he snagged him in the morning, and they all went to the airport and got on the flight, and it was easy peasy. But yeah, I mean, luckily MLW is pretty organized in the travel front, so that made it very easy for us to, it just sucks sometimes because some promotions don't get back to you for a long time, so you don't know where to where to either book a flight or where to either book a hotel. So luckily they were very responsive and we got that handled easily.
Gotcha. And the other question, through this whole process with the expo, were you made aware of their history with wrestling in the building? And namely, and I think you had retweeted this, was 30 plus years ago, my dad and I went to a closed circuit screening of WrestleMania 4
crazy.
At the expo. And it was crazy because 31, I mean, you guys aren't, I don't know how old you are, John, but like Randy's not even 31. Like he wasn't even born by the time I was watching wrestling there. And I was trying to remember, they must have had other wrestling shows there over the years. So through this whole process, did you run into people that kind of told you about the history of wrestling in the building?
Yeah. They told me a lot of the different things that they had in that building, including wrestling. But there was a fan who sent me an email that had some like really cool history facts. Like I think there was a WWF World Heavyweight title match in '69 with Bruno Sammartino there.
Oh wow.
There was a Indian strap match with Chief Jay Strongbow and Freddie Blassie in '73. I believe they had a WWF television taping in '93, but I could be wrong. But they hadn't had wrestling there in 16 years. So a lot of the people from the venue and fans in general who are in the area were very excited to have it back. And I think that hopefully throughout the next few years, we get to create some more history at the expo.
We're very much looking forward to that. We hope all of you enjoyed Know Your Enemy. We hope all of you enjoyed this show. Josh, thanks for hopping on. Randy, we'll do it again soon. And folks, we'll see you later.